let's get into Malik Willis. Okay, he definitely looked great in the pro day. He was hitting guys in stride from 50 yards out, 60 yards out. I heard in his pro day, he looked very, very, very good at the combine throwing slants compared to all the other quarterbacks that I saw. Like Matt Corral, Sam Howell, and all those other guys. But a lot of people think, based off all of this hype, that they might be getting the next, let's say, Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray or something of that sort. Okay. Now, I want you to understand something like this. Like, he's nothing near that. And I'm going to go into detail right now. Okay. First off, he is a transfer from Auburn. That's your first red flag. He's a transfer. Sometimes that's not really a red flag. It's not always going to be a red flag, but in this case, it is a red flag. So in Auburn, he ends up transferring to Liberty because he can't beat up Jared Statham. He can't beat out Jared Statham. I'm going to repeat it again. He can't beat out Jerry Stidham. That's why he transferred to Liberty. That's your first red flag right there. Now, when he transferred to Liberty, his first season, he goes and puts up some all right numbers. He goes up, he gets 265 attempts, 170 completions, 64.2% completion percentage, only 2,250 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, and six interception with a QB rate of 155.8. Now, that's not bad. It ain't the best either. But let's take a look at his rushing. His rushing, he went ahead and had 141 attempts for 944 yards and 14 touchdowns. Now, his rushing is on point. Those are the kind of stats you want to see if you think this guy's going to be anything near the guys that I was comparing him to. I'm not saying that this is comparison on Player Profiler or anything, but I'm just giving you an example because a lot of people think they're getting that type of player when they talk about Malik Willis, especially after all the pro day hype and everything that's going on around him. Mike, I don't know where he goes. With good coaching, he could very well be the best quarterback in this draft class. I'm not saying that, but from the sample size that I'm seeing, which is only 2 years in college, that's too small to make him the standalone number one quarterback in this draft class, in my opinion. That's all I'm saying. And I think you should look into these numbers, and I think you should put this into your notes and put into consideration of before you draft this guy. If you don't need a quarterback, I would definitely, and you had the 1-1 or the 1-2 or even the 1-3, I would definitely wouldn't be mad at you if you went with Brees Hall, Kenneth Walker, and maybe the number one receiver because that's the hole you have to fill on your team. I would definitely do that. I wouldn't be mad if you did that at all, especially with this draft class at quarterback. It's anybody's guess who the best quarterback comes out to be years down the line with this draft class, or even if any of these guys shine. It's yet to be determined, folks. But from what I'm seeing here, pretty long shot. It's a pretty long shot. You want to get somebody to compare him to? Let's go ahead and compare him the junior year that Lamar Jackson had with Louisville, which he was in the ACC, which is a way better conference, way better conference. So let's look at his passing. His passing, his junior year, which was the last year he was there. Let's go to his sophomore year, because let's just compare his sophomore year to his junior year. All right. His sophomore year, he had 409 attempts, 230 completions, and he had a 56.2 completion percentage. He had over 3,500 yards passing, 30 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. See, he had over 30 touchdowns. And his completion percentage wasn't that good, which was a big question mark coming out of college, which is probably the reason why he fell so much in the draft and was probably the last person picked in that year's draft in the first round. But you go to his sophomore year rushing. He has 260 attempts. He has over 1,500 yards rushing. He has 21 touchdowns. Do the comparison. Look at the stats that I just gave you. Over 1,500 yards rushing and 21 touchdowns with 260 attempts. Okay, so this is how far you're trying to of a gap you have when you're trying to compare these type of players. I'm not saying that these guys are comparable. I'm just saying you might think you're getting that type of player, and in reality, I don't want you to get blindfolded. I don't want you to get the wool pulled over your head and then waste a pick on somebody that you really thought was going to end up panning out to be the next Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, etc. Something of that sort. Maybe even a tier under that, but still relevant and you waste a pick in the first round when you needed another player to fill another hole in your team. That's what you want to do. Sometimes most of the time you want to pick best player available, but sometimes in draft classes like these, you want to go after the best player possible, long term, short term, period. And you want to go with a short thing. You don't know what you're getting with Malik Willis. The sample size isn't that big, in my opinion. His senior year, if you want to go into his senior year, we can go ahead and go into his senior year. He had 339 attempts, 207 completions. He had over 61.1% completion. He had 2,857 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. He really didn't eclipse the 3,000-yard mark again. He obviously had a better percentage than Lamar because he was in the low 50s, and he's obviously past the 60s. But Lamar had a lot more touchdowns. He had a lot more throwing yards than this guy. It was just a better season altogether. So I just want you guys to understand where I'm coming from. I'm not throwing shade at Malik Willis, but I thought after all the praise and all the hype that I've been hearing about him, he would have better numbers than these and a bigger sample size. So guys, I wouldn't be mad if you picked another quarterback first before Willis because of this. Not only that, he went from the SEC, an independent conference, which is nowhere near the same competition, nothing. So he should have been blowing, in my opinion, he should have had the Lamar Jackson numbers with all this hype surrounding him and all that in a weaker class, in a weaker conference. And I would have been a little bit more on board than I am now after seeing all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's tough. It's tough. Like I said, he had a great pro day. He was hitting guys in stride 50 to 60 yards out. That's awesome to see. He has a strong arm. When I saw him at the combine, he was hitting guys effortlessly. It looked like he was throwing those slants and those passes out there effortlessly. Maybe that transcends onto the field, but from a statistical standpoint, which I'm a bigger film guy than anything else, but I have to do my numbers. I have to do my research because if not, I look like a moron, like anything else in life. You have to research before you do anything. But yeah, I wasn't planning on doing a show on quarterbacks because I thought it was whatever. But at this point, when I seen these numbers as opposed to the other quarterbacks that I'm gonna go into, I have to bring light to a couple things and all the stuff that I hear. I haven't been really hearing this stuff, but I think what knocks Malik Willis is in his lack of athleticism. It's just his lack of sample size and that transfer. Those are all red flags. Not being able to beat out Jerry Stidham in Auburn is a huge red flag for me. Not being able to throw over 3,000 yards in any of your seasons at Liberty, which is not a big conference, is a huge red flag for me. His running game is on point, but he's going to have to put it together both ways in the NFL for it to work.